The latest jobs report just dropped, and I'm not going to sugarcoat this. The numbers are deeply concerning. The U.S. labor market lost 105,000 jobs in October and only gained 64,000 in November. If you've been feeling like finding a job or getting ahead financially has been harder than it should be, you're not imagining things. The data backs you up, and today we need to talk about what's really happening in the labor market and what it means for your wallet. Hey everyone, I'm Tony with Retirees Benefits, and for years I've been helping people navigate financial hardship, find resources, and make sense of economic news that actually affects your daily life. I've been through job loss myself. I know what it's like to send out dozens of applications and hear nothing back. So when I saw this jobs report, I knew we needed to break it down together. No jargon, no corporate spin, just the real story. Here's what we're covering today. First, I want to show you the actual numbers from the report, and they're worse than the headlines suggest. Then we'll talk about unemployment jumping to 4.6%, which even Jerome Powell, the chair of the Federal Reserve, says is the single most important data point for the labor market. After that, I need to tell you about wages and inflation, because you're probably getting a pay cut right now, even if you got a raise. We'll look at which industries are being devastated by layoffs, and then I'll give you practical steps you can take to protect yourself and your family. My goal isn't to scare you. It's to give you the truth so you can make informed decisions about your work and finances. So let's talk about what the jobs report actually shows. October saw 105,000 jobs lost. That's not a slowdown. That's actual job losses. November gained back 64,000. But that still puts us at a net loss of 41,000 jobs over those 2 months. But here's what you really need to understand. These numbers aren't even accurate. Even Jerome Powell, the chair of the Federal Reserve, recently admitted that job figures are being drastically overstated, possibly by as much as 60,000 jobs per month. Let that sink in. The person running our monetary policy is saying the government is inflating the job numbers. When you look at the trend over the past 4 years, you can see it clearly. The labor market has been weakening, but the past 6 months? Things have really taken a turn for the worse. We've seen job losses in 3 of the last 6 months. And history tells us these numbers will likely be revised downward even further in the coming months. This is why the Federal Reserve has been cutting interest rates. They know the economy needs help, and they know the labor market is in trouble. Now let's talk unemployment. The rate just jumped to 4.6%. I want you to look at that trend because it's not pretty. It's been climbing steadily, and that's a really bad sign. Jerome Powell himself has said that when it comes to the labor market, the single most important data point is the unemployment rate. Well, there it is, and it's looking very ugly right now. What this means for you is simple. There are more people competing for fewer jobs. If you're job searching, you already know this. You're sending out applications and hearing nothing. You're competing against dozens or hundreds of other qualified people for the same position. That's not in your head. That's what a 4.6% unemployment rate looks like on the ground. Here's something I need you to understand because it's affecting your standard of living right now. Wages are growing at a rate of 3.5%. That sounds okay, right? Wrong. The rate of inflation is currently around 6%. That means wages are not keeping up with inflation. This means that most Americans are seeing pay cuts in 2025, even if they got a raise. Let me be crystal clear about this. If you're not getting a 6% raise, you are accepting a pay cut. Your money buys less than it did last year. Your standard of living is going down. Now, some people will say, wait, the government's CPI inflation report says inflation is only 3%. Here's the truth about that. The CPI inflation report doesn't actually measure price inflation. It measures the change in the cost of living, which is a completely different thing. The real money supply, the actual amount of money in the economy, has been growing at an annualized rate of about 5% recently. And it's heading towards 6% now that the Federal Reserve has turned the money printers back on. So when it comes time to negotiate your compensation, keep this in mind. Anything less than a 6% raise is technically a pay cut. You need at least 6% just to maintain your current standard of living. And honestly, I expect inflation to accelerate even more in 2026, which means you'll need an even bigger raise just to stay even. This is why so many families feel like they're working harder but falling behind, because they are. Now let's talk about layoffs, because the numbers here are stunning. According to the Challenger report, from January through November of this year, job cuts are up 54% compared to the same period last year. Let me say that again, 54% more job cuts. From January through November 2025, employers have announced 1,170,821 job cuts. That's over 1.1 million people who lost their jobs this year. For November alone, here are the top reasons companies are cutting jobs. Restructuring led to 217,000 job losses due to store, unit, or department closings. That's entire locations shutting down. Artificial intelligence was cited for 280 job cuts just in November. And AI has been responsible for over 54,000 job cuts this year. This is just the beginning. AI is going to continue replacing workers, especially in entry-level and administrative roles. Market and economic conditions caused 15,755 job cuts in November. Companies are seeing demand soften, and they're responding by cutting staff. And then there's the downstream effect of government cuts, which has rippled through the economy and caused even more private sector layoffs in November. Let me break down which industries are cutting the most jobs, because this matters. If you're in one of these fields, or you know someone who is, you need to be aware and prepared. Number 7. Media companies continue to cut positions as advertising revenue declines. Number 6. Nonprofit organizations. This one's sad but predictable. As government funding gets cut, nonprofits that depend on that funding have to lay people off. Number 5. Retail. Despite what politicians say about strong consumer spending, the truth is consumers are slowing down. Retailers are feeling it, and they're cutting staff in response. Number 4. The services sector. This includes cleaning services, staffing companies, which are cutting back because the labor market is softening, and outsourcing firms. Number 3. Food companies. One of the hardest hit areas has been companies handling beef products due to rising input costs. When your raw materials cost more, profits get squeezed, and workers lose their jobs. Number 2. Tech companies. We're still seeing the fallout from pandemic overhiring. They're calling it right-sizing now, instead of downsizing, but the result is the same. Thousands of people out of work. And number 1. The industry hit hardest in November. Telecommunications. This sector had a brutal month. Take Verizon, for example. They had massive job cuts in November due to restructuring to save costs. And between you and me, I'm actually on Verizon, and I swear the coverage is getting worse every year. I have low expectations, but they keep disappointing. Guess I'm not getting a Verizon sponsorship anytime soon, but I'm just being honest. So how has this jobs report affected the Federal Reserve's plans? The next Fed meeting is January 28th. Before this jobs report, there was a 24.4% chance the Fed would cut interest rates at that meeting. After the report, the odds stayed exactly the same. Now, I don't know if the market just shrugged off this report or if there's a lag in the data, but as of right now, there's less than a 1 in 4 chance of rate cuts in January. Here's what you need to know. At the last Federal Reserve meeting, they released their projections and said they're only planning to cut interest rates one time in 2026 by just 0.25%. That's basically nothing. However, there's a new Fed chair coming into power in May 2026, and most likely they're going to cut rates more aggressively than currently projected. That could help the labor market, but it's also going to fuel more inflation, which brings us back to the pay cut problem. So what are your action steps? Because you're not powerless here. First, if you're employed, this is the time to make yourself indispensable. Document your wins, take on visible projects, and build relationships within your company. This is not the time to coast. With over 1.1 million layoffs this year, you need to be someone they can't afford to let go. Second, If you're job searching, adjust your expectations and your strategy. Apply to more positions. Tailor every resume. Use your network aggressively. Most jobs are still filled through connections, not online applications. And be prepared for a longer search than you'd like. Third, negotiate that raise aggressively. Remember, you need at least 6% just to break even with inflation. Anything less is a pay cut. Don't accept the standard 3% cost of living adjustment. That's not keeping up with reality. Fourth, protect yourself financially. Build your emergency fund even if it's just $20 a week. Cut expenses where you can. Look into assistance programs. We have tons of videos on this channel about resources available to you. SNAP benefits, utility assistance, childcare help. There's no shame in getting help when the economy is working against you. And fifth, consider industries that are still hiring. Healthcare support roles, skilled trades, and certain infrastructure jobs are still in demand. If you're in a struggling field, it might be time to pivot. Here's what I want you to take away from this. The labor market is in serious trouble. Unemployment is rising, wages aren't keeping up with inflation, and over 1 million people have lost their jobs this year. This is real, and it's affecting real families. But you're not powerless. Knowledge is power, and now you understand what's really happening. Not what the government wants you to believe, but what the actual data shows. You can make strategic decisions. You can protect yourself and your family. You can prepare for what's coming. And you're not alone. Millions of people are going through this with you. We're all figuring it out together. By the way, we've got the inflation report coming out this Thursday, just 2 days from now. I'll be breaking that down too, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. If this video helped you understand what's going on, please hit that subscribe button. We put out videos every week about economic news, resources, and financial strategies for people who are working hard but struggling to get ahead. Check out the playlist I'm linking in the description about job search strategies and navigating layoffs. It's full of practical advice. Drop a comment and let me know. Are you seeing this in your own job search or industry? What's your experience been? I read every comment, and your stories help other people feel less alone. Thanks for watching, and remember, stay informed, stay prepared, and take care of yourself and your family. I'll see you in the next video.